Who are we waiting on?
I'm going to go ahead and get started. So we're waiting for our main speaker from Adams County, but I'm going to go ahead and get started. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the meeting. We don't have any consent items. Do Councilmember Jurinsky and Councilmember Zvonek, do you approve the minutes?
I approve.
Okay, I do see Lori on here. So Lori, we're going to have you start first and give us the federal legislative update.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I want to start and give an update on the debt ceiling limit that was reached, appropriations, and then the FAA reauthorization. Please let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to interrupt me. As you know, the Congress and administration reached a deal to raise the debt limit, as well as to the level of appropriations that is allowed this year for both defense and non-defense. So that would make it easier, of course, to pass a bill because the House and Senate had certain limits that they knew they could not go above, right? On the House side, there's a group of members that were, concerned about the debt limit deal. And so they've decided to lower their appropriations overall number, both for defense and non-defense, below the debt limit deal. They are starting to pass appropriation bills over there. Is appropriations for agriculture, military construction have been passed this past week, along with Homeland Security and Subcommittee. They're going to continue to mark up bills next week. And I don't have a calendar yet from them, but I'm hoping it will include Transportation HUD, which is where a couple of our earmarks that Congressman Crow recommended for us are included. So as soon as I see the final bill text, I'll send it over to Liz and Roberto to see if our member items requested from Crow are in there. On the Senate side, they're starting their markups next week without agriculture and military construction as well. And I'll continue to keep y'all posted on, as you know, the senators were very generous and gave us also recommended our projects and several bills over there too. FAA reauthorization. This looks like something we can get done this year in a bipartisan, bicameral way. The House passed its bill out of committee unanimously, and as you know, that's really hard to do right now. Nowadays, to have everyone pass a bill from all top parts of the country, both Republican and Democrat. It has really large funding increases for the AIP program. That's called the Airport Improvement Program. And for example, this is what Denver Airport relies on for all their projects, including runways and airport terminals. So everyone's really excited to see that good increase of funding in there. On the Senate side, they started marking up their bill yesterday. There was an amendment that caught everyone else by surprise by Senator Thune and Senator Sinema on pilot training. So they stalled their markup, but they're hopefully going to start back next week and to complete it. The House wants to get its bill done by July 17th on the floor, and the Senate is on that same timeline as well. So we can actually get something done before the end of the year. So any questions?
Is there any questions from Councilmember Jurinsky, Councilmember Zvonek on the federal legislative update?
No.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Lori. I appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
Bye.
Bye. I think I see Alicia Reese on. Alicia is the Deputy County Manager of Administrative Service for Adams County. Alicia, welcome.
I am not as familiar with this technology, so I'm struggling a bit, but I am happy to come and present for you all. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, welcome. And I think I saw in the backup there was like a PowerPoint. Did you want to, I mean, do you have that, or how are you going to present? Okay. Can someone help Alicia, please, with how to, so she could put the PowerPoint up so the committee could see it?
Let me have 2 seconds and I will get that up for you guys. And then Alicia, you can just tell me to move the slide. Give me 2 seconds.
Great, thank you.
Well, Alicia, while we're waiting, we do have 2 committee members. Councilmember Jurinsky, she's our vice chair, and Councilmember Zvonek, he's a member of our committee as well. So, and I'm the chair. So nice to meet you.
Great, wonderful meeting you all. I'm so happy to be here. And so some of this information may be retread for a few of you, depending on where you may have seen this. But I think for many, it'll be a nice update on what the county has put their dollars for ARPA for.
Okay.
Okay, so we can just click forward then, Cynthia. So this is just a basic breakdown of our first tranche. As you all know, these dollars were delivered in two pieces. The first in 2021 and the second in 2022, truly. And our Board of County Commissioners initially decided with the first half of $101 million total for the county to place those initial dollars into a grant fund for immediate response in the community. If y'all remember, 2021 was a pretty tough year still. We were coming out of really major health issues and hadn't quite gotten into any sort of recovery. And so this was really intended to respond health-wise and to stabilize folks, and then to move to that second step of economic recovery with small business. And this started the work that is continuing today with Tranche 2. But this went to 70 different organizations throughout the county, and more than 100 individual projects were funded. And that is about halfway through expenditure now. And it was everything from vaccine clinics to land acquisition for affordable housing and everything in between. So we can go to the next one. So now Tranche 2 was delineated for larger, more regional share projects, and our board decided to focus in on homelessness prevention and housing, as well as behavioral and mental health allocations. Those really rose to the top of what we were seeing in terms of challenges for folks in our county to recover. And these were areas that were more regional in nature, that some of our individual communities were needing some additional support to carry forward that work. We'll go to the next one. And this next slide, it's not super here, but you all, I think, received this. So if you want to share it with everyone later, you can get a sense of what individual projects we undertook under these two umbrellas. First being housing and homelessness prevention. We already are moving in the land banking space. We have 3 projects that we're supporting across the county for development of units. Next, many of you will know about the Clarion Hotel conversion with Denver. It's really on the Denver-Adams County line, and we contributed to land acquisition, $3.8 million of that project. Next, we're working on a farm worker housing partnership with Community Resources and Housing Development Group. That one, I don't know if you all are familiar with this team, because primarily they work in rural areas of the state. When I was in the San Luis Valley, we worked with them quite a lot for farm worker housing. But within our Splendid Valley, historic Splendid Valley in the Brighton area, we are working to set aside some properties for continuation of historic agriculture. And so looking to have a farm worker housing project there on county land. And then there are several tiny home projects that we're developing in Commerce City and unincorporated Adams County, as well as a site in Brighton, looking to support that. And then in terms of programming, what our data has shown, and this is probably not new to you all either, is that domestic violence and violence in the home generally is the #1 reason for homelessness, and particularly first-time homelessness in the county. And so the board set aside roughly $5 million for domestic violence respite housing for vouchers and for development of transitional units. So we're just getting started on that. You all may see some RFPs coming out for participation with our nonprofit groups. So when we have that, we'll share that with your homelessness teams, which we're really closely involved with. And then some rapid rehousing and severe weather programming in that one. And then in mental and behavioral health, we're really kicking off with our public health department to map services and supports and to understand the gaps that we have in service accessibility across the county. And so you'll definitely hear about that because we'll be working in the Aurora area all the way through the county, 72 miles wide. We'll be working there. And from there, we'll have an earmark for implementation of recommendations that come out of that mapping. And that's what that $3 million earmark is for. And the remainder of these funds is for mobile mental health and co-responder services, as well as training through our health department for reduction of stigma and to seek care and improve access throughout the county. The Strengthening Families Partnership, I know many of you are involved in that, is really working to support early childhood care as well as human services needs across the county. We can go to the next one. And now next time I am on WebEx, I will know this much better. So thank you all for that. So we can go to the next slide. Just wanted to give you a bit of background as to where our assessments came from and where our data came from. Really looking through our homelessness management information system that many of our communities have as well. But this is where we were determining what our population is comprised of and what the need is that folks are experiencing. And also looking at updating our housing needs assessment post-COVID. We had just completed it just prior to COVID kicking off. And so we decided to do a midstream update with those lessons learned, and that's also incorporated. You can go to the next slide. And same here, indicating our consolidated plan for housing, and we'll be focusing on somewhat rental units and transitional units with wraparound services, but we're also trying to move into home ownership space. Not the best time to do it, I suppose, with the challenges on the market and interest rates the way they are, but we really are looking for long-term wealth support for folks, and so really wanting to get into that ownership space as best we can. We can go to the next slide. And some of these I'll go into more depth than others, but I think most are familiar with the Clarion Hotel conversion. That is well on its way. We know that some 8% of those who will access the site will be folks from Adams County, and that worked for us for our participation in this deal, but it was a pretty great project to get going. So we're happy about that. Go to the next one. And y'all are very familiar with this project, but our contribution to the homelessness campus in City of Aurora is that $5 million to assist y'all in getting ready to go. And I know that this slide is a bit dated. Do you all know if the remainder of your funding is yet secured?
Councilmember Lawson, this is Jessica.
Go ahead, Jessica.
Yeah, so the request for application came out about a week ago, Alicia. So we're in the process of applying to the state at this point. So we'll be reaching out probably in the next week for a formal letter of support for this from Adams County.
Perfect. We will be very, very happy to provide that. If you want to send that to me, Jessica, I can coordinate that pretty quickly then.
Perfect, will do.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Okay, well, that's excellent news. I'm very happy to hear it. So then on the next slide, we talk a little bit about our land banking. We're working with our housing authorities, primarily with Maker Housing, given that that is the Adams County primary housing authority, but also some other housing development organizations, Habitat for Humanity and others, to work on acquisition of parcels and to move forward with affordable housing projects. This amount was spent pretty quickly. There are a lot of boundaries around what counties can do with land banking. Differently than cities, we have to make a case for any acquisition of land for what public use that will be prior to any acquisition. We're not permitted by state law to take advantage of a property for acquisition and then develop the plan. Unfortunately, we have to have that all in place first prior to acquisition. And so sometimes that means that we don't time the market well. But ARPA specifically allowed for acquisition for affordable housing. So we were able to act quickly in this case. And we put toward that as much as we could. And then next is that farm worker housing project I let y'all know about. We are in utility acquisition currently, and we anticipate that that is probably a 3-year time frame for this one. Then our tiny home village projects on the next slide. We're working with Commerce City on the first 2 projects and Salvation Army for the 3rd in our unincorporated area. And then next is our domestic violence project. It says 4.3 million here, but we've had some recapture from some of our allocations. And so we have continued to press dollars into this line item. And then lastly, in housing is our rapid rehousing project we're working on with Salvation Army and some others. And so next, our mental and behavioral health projects. Same thing here, just identifying our background and criteria for selection of projects here, identified within our community needs assessments. They are evidence-based and collaborative regionally. We're working with quite a few groups now that we have our public health department off and running as of January 1st. And in the very first 6 months, there's been a lot of ground covered. So you'll hear more about that too. And really the next few slides, you can come back to those if you like. It's just really giving us a sense of who we've been working with and planning and where we've been gathering our data. So Cynthia, if you want to move to slide 21, maybe. This is the project summary that gives a bit more information into the various projects and opportunities for collaboration. And then the following slides really go into much more detail. We anticipate establishing a 5-year mental health plan that will inform our services at the county health department. And we will be launching a dashboard to share that information with the public so that folks can monitor that and monitor improvement of access to services. And next, our mobile mental health. This will be all over the county, but really coordinating with the sheriff's office and our parks departments and really regionally with our city park areas as well. This is really a trail outreach project to connect folks to services and navigators along trails. And the next being a co-responder expansion really within our East County areas and then rural areas. So you'll hear much more about that one. And I talked a little bit about strengthening families a little bit earlier, but this will be a launch into the community where it's really seed money to begin this work with Early Childhood Partnership and some others, so that then they can launch and become self-sufficient over the years, given that ARPA money is not forever. And then lastly, mental health training with our county health department. That'll be available throughout the county, all over, and probably more regionally too, crossing some county boundaries in concert with other health departments. So that was a lot of information just to kind of throw at you, but I wanted to give a sense of where the county is investing dollars, and sort of on the tail end of this as well, we have had a regional discussion for detoxification and walk-in crisis services lately as well, and we'll be moving forward beyond our gap analysis for a long-term solution to replace what we had countywide with Arapahoe House and then with Community Reach Center. But that all closed down, first Arapahoe House, and I think it was 2018, and then Community Reach in 2021. We are drafting a request for information, or RFI, here shortly to determine if there are partners that we can work with to relaunch a larger county service, because we know that we are pressing demand on City of Aurora resources as well as Denver and Jefferson County. So we're trying to look for a solution there too.
So Alicia, thank you so much for the presentation. And the reason I wanted to bring you here is because I think it's really important. A lot of our colleagues ask, where's the county when we're talking about issues, especially when we're talking about homelessness, when we're also talking about affordable housing. So I just thank you so much for the presentation and giving us this information.
Yes.
I think it's just really important that we all regionally, because we do sit in 3 counties, that we work together to address these issues. So thank you for all of this information. To my colleagues, Councilmember Jurinsky, Councilmember Zvonek, do you have any questions for Alicia?
I do not.
I don't.
Okay.
Thank you for the presentation, and thanks to the county for their ongoing support.
Certainly, we're really glad to be a partner, and we will write all the support letters you want. And when we have dollars available to us, we're really happy to work for a great solution regionally. We know it's a challenge to be in several counties at once. I actually started out my career in Broomfield, and as some of you may remember, they were in 4 counties at one time. And it makes things very challenging to serve the public. So we're just happy to help however we can.
Okay. Thank you so much, Alicia. Really appreciate you being here today.
Certainly.
Okay. So we're going to go to our legislative position discussion. Liz?
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. Great to see you all again. I'm going to share my screen really quickly just so we can all see what we're looking at. Oh, I think that might be the wrong one. Okay, so can everyone see the position document on the screen?
No.
Okay. Can everyone see it now?
Yes.
Perfect, great. So the position, the bill that we are presenting today is Senate Bill 1514, House Resolution 3170, Homes for Every Local Protector, Educator, and Responder, or the HELPER Act. This is a heavily bipartisan bill. Congressman Crow has also recently signed on as a co-sponsor to it. The bill overall would create a home loan program within the Federal Housing Administration to assist law enforcement officers, firefighters, EMTs, paramedics, and pre-K through 12 teachers, or what are classified as first responders, by eliminating the down payment requirement and the monthly mortgage insurance premium for first-time homebuyers who would qualify under this bill. City staff is recommending actively support, as the bill could help to expand affordable housing options for first responders and be utilized as a recruiting tool for the city. The mayor has also indicated his support for this legislation.
Okay. Is there any questions from Councilmember Jurinsky, Councilmember Zvonek, and then do you support the city staff's position of support on this legislation?
No questions, and I support.
Councilmember Jurinsky?
Same for me.
Same for me as well.
Perfect. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. So we're going to go into our state legislative update, our end of the session report. It looks like we have, I saw Peggy, Cami, and Totsi. So who wants to begin? And hello, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Hello. I'm happy to jump in and start with just a brief recap of the legislative session. As you know, we had about 620 bills that were introduced during the 4 months of session. We had about a third of the legislature that was brand new, which was fairly challenging, particularly since a lot of folks came right off of elections in November, trying to get bills together before the session started in January. I think one of the things that kind of fell through the cracks with that quick turnaround was a lot of collaboration and stakeholding and discussion amongst legislators and interested parties. And we saw that in several of the bills that we worked on, in particular, and maybe one of the more highly watched bills was Senate Bill 213, which was the governor's land use bill. This bill was introduced late in the session with local governments not having reviewed the bill or having input into the bill's process. We took a position early in session to really try to proactively insert ourselves in that legislation. We had several folks from the city come down to the legislature and meet with leadership, talk about concerns with some of the concepts that were expected to be seen in the bill, whether that was mandatory requirements that would be put on local governments, ADUs, mandates that weren't funded, removal of local controls, those sort of things. So spent a lot of time working with the governor's office and leadership on the bill. When the bill came out of the Senate, it was in decent shape, in much better shape than it had been when it introduced. When it moved to the House, a lot of the concerns with the original bill were put back into it. So when it went back to the Senate, the bill was not in great shape, and we advocated that it go to conference committee. In the end, the bill died the last night of session. And just a big shout out to the city. I think City of Aurora was a big leader in discussions around that bill, really proactive and a part of working with CML very closely, and trying to make sure that the city's voice was heard. So very effective on Senate Bill 213. Another bill that we worked on was the workers' comp bill that would have removed caps and changed the scheduling. We worked with bill sponsors and proactive proponents of the bill, kept the bill from being introduced. It would have been very devastating to a lot of entities around the state, including local governments and businesses. So both that bill and Senate Bill 213 will be back next session. So we'll spend a lot of time talking about the interim committees and some of the work we're going to do during the interim to try to stay on top of those issues. Couple other bills that we watch closely. Human resources bill, there was a workplace harassment bill, equal pay, job application bill. Those bills, we work with the business community to help make amendments to those bills and improve them so that they were more user-friendly. Auto theft legislation, as you recall, there was a artificial $2,500 limit that was in statute. That was removed with one of the auto theft bills and was signed by the governor. We worked last summer and fall to talk with our delegation and legislators about the data modernization task force legislation. That bill was introduced and passed this session. So we'll monitor that task force this summer and fall. Also worked very closely with Senator Fields and Senator Exum on the legislation that removed the names and identification of juvenile witnesses. So had a fairly successful session in what was a very, very tough session. I've been doing this for 25 years and it was by far the hardest session I've been a part of. You know, on week 2, we were plowing ahead and never really slowed down. Went into late nights pretty early in the session. But we were able to get some good things done and had a great collaborative working relationship with the city and CML and other entities that shared many of the common goals that we had. So all in all, a good session. We'll start to come up with a plan on how to reach out to delegation members this summer and fall. Start talking about some of the issues that we expect to come back next session. And as we get closer to session, hear from those legislators about some of the bills they might be working on for next session, so that if the city can be helpful in that process, we're able to offer information or educational efforts or any other resources that might be helpful as they move into session.
Is there any questions for Peggy before we move on to Totsi and Cami? Okay. Who's next, Cami or Totsi? Did you want to
I'll
give
go
an overview?
next.
Okay.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and happy Friday. I'm going to discuss the interim committees and task forces a little bit. And the 2023 interim committee season is beginning to take shape as the committee meeting dates are posted each day. However, at this time, there are very few agendas. The good thing is that the Joint Budget Committee will be meeting Tuesday for the June quarterly forecast, and we will be covering that. And that, I think, is at 9 a.m. on Tuesday morning. But other committees of interest that we have identified is the Legislative Interim Committee on Ozone Air Quality that came out of House Bill 1294, the Pollution Protection Measures Bill, and the Legislative Oversight Committee concerning Tax Policy and Task Force, Sales and Use Tax Simplification Task Force, the Pension Review Commission, the Task Force for the Consideration of Facial Recognition Services, the good old standing Transportation Legislative Review Committee, Water Resources and Agriculture Review Committee, and the Wildfire Matters Review Committee. Those are all standing interim committees now. However, the Ozone Committee is only this session. The General Assembly, or this interim, the General Assembly created a number of task forces to meet throughout the interim, including the Court Data Sharing Task Force that Peggy spoke of earlier. That was basically from ARRA and Judge Day and Council Member Lawson. The Task Force to Study Corporate Housing Ownership and the Homeowners Association and Metropolitan Districts Homeowners Rights Task Forces, though that was created this year as well. The task forces have not yet been filled with membership, and they have not been scheduled at all. All the dates are ongoing for their deadlines for that, for appointments and for schedules. So I'm happy to ask or answer any questions you may have.
Any questions to Totsi on the interim committees that are going to be, there's quite a few. So
Yeah.
there's a lot to follow on that. Okay. All right, Cami, you're next.
I'm all set. I'm happy to answer any questions or provide any clarification. Thank you.
Is there any questions from any of the members on anything from what was given the summary information from Peggy, Totsi, or Cami? Okay, I just want to say you guys did a wonderful job. Thank you so much for all of the work. This was a tough session. I've worked with you guys for many, many years, and this one was far most the toughest one I've seen even. So thank you so much for everything you do, and we look forward to kind of working through. Liz is going to be talking about this next, but kind of working through our priorities as we're prepping for next year, for the next legislative session. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, Liz, we have the legislative priority discussion.
Yes. Sharing my screen again for you all. So this kind of document and these priorities came about from the 2023 state priorities that were approved by the City Council back in 2022. These are also from input from other departments and internal staff, our lobbying team, and issues that arose during this past session. So these priorities are some of the areas that staff and lobbyists would like to see where we could work alongside our state electeds to address some areas of concern for the city. We will have some specific focuses on affordable housing and homelessness, as well as public safety. And the goal here is to be proactive for next session and to find some potential interested electeds who are willing to sponsor and draft legislation. Happy to go through each of these bullet points if you would like, or answer any questions you may have.
Councilmember Zvonek and Councilmember Jurinsky, do you have any questions about this legislative priority list and additions that you may want to be added?
No, the only thing I would, if I could, Councilmember Lawson, the only thing I would say is that and I know that this should be, and I believe it should continue to be our position of removing the cap for juvenile detention beds. But I think that one of the steps that we discussed last session and didn't make as much headway on it as we would have liked is potentially looking at making the cap, if we can't get an elimination, because I still am very skeptical that we can get a full elimination of it, but making them floating. And again, just giving more flexibility. And so I still think we take the position we want to eliminate it because that's the right policy, but I think maybe something that we could potentially proactively work toward before session starts is find somebody who might be open to this idea of making the bed cap or the numbers float so that we can actually allocate them to where there's the greatest need.
Of course, I will add that in.
Okay. Is there anything else? And again, this is just a list that has come. I guess we can kind of talk about this as we think about things within some of these categories and additional categories as well. Is that correct, Liz?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Okay. Is there anything else on this, Councilmember Zvonek, that you would like to talk about on this right now? I mean, again, this is kind of just preliminary.
Yeah,
we
for
can
now.
definitely,
Yep. The only other thing and maybe it's for another conversation, but as I think about, next, there are a couple of issues that are going to happen between now and next session, including likely a statewide vote on HH. And I know, and actually this is for George. George, I believe that somebody told me, it might have been you, that we have a rule that we have to have a unanimous vote to support or oppose a ballot measure, even if it's statutory. If that's the case, I'd like to bring forward a resolution to change that rule, because I think it's silly that we can take a position on legislation that's statutory, but not something that's voted on the people that's statutory. I wouldn't mind having a higher threshold for a constitutional measure, but assuming that that is the case, I'd like to bring forward something to change that rule, because I think that HH, which will be a policy initiative that will be before voters this fall and will have a significant impact on the city. And I think we should weigh in on it. The other one is that we had a conversation about it earlier this year, was the AQC rule, I believe it's 28. And we were opposed to it, and I think potentially looking at being a party, and then we weren't. I know it's coming back, and again, just learning more about the impact that it will have on businesses, in terms of driving kind of a mandated move towards electrification of larger buildings. I think we ought to consider again weighing in officially as a city. So those are the two things. I know those aren't next session, but they're between now and next year. So I wanted to just bring them up.
Which can you comment on those, what Councilmember Zvonek is asking about?
I'm gonna have to do a little bit of research, so forgive me for not being able to answer your question right now, but I'll get back
Okay.
to.
Okay.
That's
Is
fine.
there any- is there any way at the, maybe at the next Pfizer, or you can actually talk to Councilmember Zvonek as well offline, but maybe just so the committee can have a update on that as well, and maybe at the next meeting, that would be
Okay.
fantastic.
Okay, that would be great. I'll be ready for that.
Okay, thank you, George. I appreciate it. Anything else on this, Councilmember Zvonek and Councilmember Jurinsky? Okay, so we'll move forward with these right now, but Liz, just to say that these, there's some things that we may need to be we're adding, so I'm hoping that this is the flexible list and we're not just being told that this is the list.
No,
No.
it's pretty
Okay.
flexible. Yes.
Okay.
We can add or delete anything. These are just some of the priorities that we had come up with to address, but of course we can add and remove as needed.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, water update. Kathy, I see you online.
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I've got kind of two quick items. The first one is on the state side, Senate Bill 23-295, the Colorado River Drought Task Force. If you remember that one that we brought to you, the bill created an interim task force of 17 members that will develop legislation recommendations for the 2024 session. And one of the appointees will be a Front Range municipal water provider. And we're still waiting to find out who that appointee will be. Since both Northern Water and Southeastern Water have their own appointees, that Front Range municipal seat will represent the interests of Aurora Water, Denver Water, Pueblo Water, and Colorado Springs Utilities. And those entities collective, they're supportive if Marshall Brown should be asked to be that representative. We don't know if he will be asked, but I just wanted to make you aware that it's possible, and we're actually hopeful that that may occur. So if any questions on that item?
Any questions from the committee on that? Okay, none.
And then the second item on the federal side, there's several federal bills that have been recently introduced or will be introduced shortly. And I'm waiting to see the final introduced language. But we anticipate the need to request approval for support letters for several of these. They're on aquatic nuisance species, the Endangered Fish Recovery Program, water and agricultural tax reform, and PFAS. And so for the July FSIR meeting, if I might have 20 minutes on the agenda to go through all of these. They just kind of all landed at the same time.
Okay, that won't be a problem with me. I mean, yes, because we definitely need to make sure we do those support letters and know about them and have a discussion. So definitely allow you that time for next month.
And I'm thrilled to say that they're all positive.
Okay,
So-
that's good. That's good. That's always good. Okay, is there anything else, Kathy? And is there any questions for Kathy? Okay, thank you so much for being, I appreciate it. So from the committee, is there any miscellaneous matters for consideration? Okay, I see heads nodding. Our next meeting is
thank you.
scheduled, oh, excuse me, Councilmember Zvonek, I'm
I was
sorry.
saying, no miscellaneous matters.
Okay, as of right now, and of course, if things change, please let me know. Our next scheduled meeting is July 21st at 1 o'clock. Does that work for everyone right now?
Yep.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful holiday weekend. See
Thanks,
ya.
you too. See
Bye.
y'all.
Bye-bye. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.